The cold autumn wind chased dust devils across the parched courtyard as Faith Alden's brother slammed the door in her face, leaving her alone with nothing but her carpet bag and the clothes on her back. The October morning had dawned with bitter clarity, not unlike her situation abandoned at 22 by the only family she had left, in a frontier town where a woman alone had few respectable options. 3 days, Samuel had said, his voice hard with resentment. You've had 3 days to find suitable employment, and instead you've managed to offend the Reverend's wife. You're no longer my responsibility, Faith. Our parents may have coddled you, but I won't. Faith pressed her trembling fingers to her lips, fighting back tears. She journeyed all the way from Boston after her parents' death, believing her brother would welcome her. Instead, she'd found a stranger hardened by the Colorado territory, with a shrewish wife who saw Faith only as another mouth to feed. The year was 1875, and Faith Alden was completely alone in Silver Creek. I suppose you'll be needing somewhere to stay. A deep voice drawled from behind her. Faith whirled around, clutching her bag to her chest. A tall man sat atop a dappled gray horse, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He dismounted with practiced ease, and Faith took an instinctive step backward. "I don't need charity, sir," she said, though her quavering voice betrayed her. "Good, because I'm not offering any." He stepped into the light, revealing sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. "Name's Adam Zephyr. I run the Broken Ridge Ranch about 5 miles west of here. I'm looking for a housekeeper, and Mrs. Thornton at the general store says you're in need of work." Faith assessed him warily. He was tall and broad-shouldered, perhaps 30 years of age. His clothes were plain but well kept, and there was no wedding ring on his finger. "I don't know the first thing about housekeeping on a ranch," she admitted. A half-smile tugged at his lips. "Can you cook without burning water?" "Yes, of course." "Can you clean, mend clothes, and keep a tidy home?" Faith nodded. "Then you know enough." He glanced toward her brother's closed door. "Unless you've got better prospects waiting," Faith squared her shoulders, her Boston pride wrestling with her desperate situation. "I'll need my own quarters and fair wages. You'll have both, plus meals and Sundays off. I've got a small cabin near the main house. It used to be for the foreman before I built him a new place." "Why would you offer employment to a woman you don't know?" Adam shrugged, taking her bag without waiting for permission. "Good help's hard to find out here, and—" His eyes softened slightly. No one should be left with nowhere to go. As he loaded her bag onto his horse, Faith cast one last glance at her brother's house. "You'll stay here now," Adam said, not unkindly, as he helped her onto the horse. "Silver Creek's full of folks who have started over. You won't be the first or the last." The journey to Broken Ridge Ranch passed mostly in silence, with Faith seated behind Adam on his horse, reluctantly holding onto his waist as they traversed the rugged landscape. She tried to keep her composure, but as the miles stretched on, the enormity of her situation pressed down upon her. Here she was, a properly raised Boston lady, heading to an unknown ranch with a man she'd just met. What would her mother say? Almost there, Adam called over his shoulder as they crested a hill. The valley below took Faith's breath away. Nestled against the backdrop of the Colorado mountains was a sprawling ranch house of sturdy timber, smoke curling from its stone chimney. Several smaller buildings dotted the property, and in the distance, cattle grazed on golden grassland. "It's beautiful," Faith murmured. "Been building it for 7 years now," Adam replied, a note of pride in his voice. "Started with nothing but the land and a tent." As they approached, Faith noticed a young boy of perhaps 12 running out to meet them. He had a shock of red hair and a spattering of freckles across his nose. "You're back early, Mr. Zephyr," the boy called. Did you get the—" He stopped short when he noticed Faith. "Who's this?" Adam dismounted, then reached up to help Faith down. His hands were strong and calloused as they circled her waist, and she felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach. "This is Miss Faith Alden," Adam explained. "She's going to be our new housekeeper. Miss Alden, this is Timothy Walsh, my ranch hand in training." Timothy gawked openly until Adam gave him a gentle cuff on the shoulder. "Mind your manners, Tim. Take Dusty to the stable and give him a good rub-down." As Timothy led the horse away, Adam guided Faith toward the cabin he'd mentioned. It was small but sturdy, with a covered porch and clean windows. "It's not fancy," Adam said, opening the door, "but it's dry, warm, and it's got a lock on the door. I had Mrs. Thornton's husband build the furniture when I first came to these parts." Faith stepped inside, surprised to find the interior bright and clean, if sparse. A narrow bed with a quilt stood against one wall, a small table with 2 chairs in the center, and a modest cookstove in the corner. A trunk sat at the foot of the bed, and a wash basin rested on a simple dresser. "There's a pump out back for water," Adam continued. "Outhouse is about 20 paces behind. I'll have Timothy bring you some firewood before sundown." Faith set her bag on the bed, running her fingers over the quilt. "Did Mrs. Thornton make this as well?" Adam's expression shifted slightly. "No, my mother did. She died on the journey west when I was 16. "I'm sorry," Faith said softly. "I lost both my parents 6 months ago, influenza." Adam nodded, understanding passing between them. "Get settled in. Come up to the main house when you're ready, and I'll show you around. We usually eat supper at 6. After he left, Faith sank onto the bed, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability now that she was alone. Tears threatened, but she pushed them back. This was her life now, and she would make the best of it. She unpacked her meager belongings: 3 dresses, undergarments, a nightgown, her mother's silver hairbrush, a small framed photograph of her parents, and a well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. When she'd composed herself, Faith washed her face in the basin and pinned her auburn hair back into a neat bun. Her gray traveling dress was dusty from the ride, but it would have to do until she could properly launder her clothes. The main house was more impressive up close. Built of sturdy logs with a deep porch wrapping around the front, it spoke of permanence and prosperity. Faith knocked tentatively on the door. "It's open." Adam's voice called from within. Faith entered to find a large, open room that served as both kitchen and dining area. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a long table with benches occupied the center. Adam stood at a rough-hewn counter, sorting through a stack of papers. "This is where you'll be working mostly," he explained, gesturing around. "Kitchen, dining room. Through there is my study and bedroom." He pointed to a hallway. "Those are private unless there's cleaning to be done. Upstairs are 2 more bedrooms, one for guests, though we rarely have any, and one that Timothy uses when the weather's bad." Faith nodded, taking in the details. The house was clean but distinctly masculine, lacking the touches that made a house a home. No curtains hung at the windows, no decorative items adorned the mantel, and the furniture, while well made, was purely functional. "When would you like me to begin?" she asked. "How about now?" "Supper needs cooking, and I've got ranch business to attend to." Adam handed her a key. "This is for the pantry. There should be plenty to work with." Left alone in the kitchen, Faith rolled up her sleeves and explored the pantry. It was well stocked with staples: flour, sugar, beans, salt pork, and canned vegetables. In a small cold box she found eggs and milk. She decided on a simple but hearty meal of salt pork, beans, cornbread, and stewed apples. As she worked, Timothy bounded in through the back door, his curiosity evident. "Miss Alden, Mr. Zephyr said to bring more firewood for the stove." Thank you, Timothy. You can put it there. She indicated a box next to the stove. Are you really from Boston? He asked, his eyes wide. I mean, I haven't ever met anyone from so far east. Faith smiled. I am. I lived there all my life until recently. How come you left? Boston's supposed to be real fancy. Faith hesitated, unsure how much to share. Sometimes circumstances change and we have to change with them. Timothy seemed to accept this. Mr. Zephyr says the same thing. He says the only thing certain in life is that nothing stays the same. Your Mr. Zephyr sounds wise, Faith remarked, sliding the cornbread into the oven. He is. He took me in when my pa died in a mining accident 2 years back. Ma had already passed, so I didn't have nobody. Mr. Zephyr lets me help with the horses and cattle. Says when I'm older I might make foreman someday. Faith's estimation of Adam rose. Taking in an orphaned boy spoke of a good heart beneath his reserved exterior. That evening, the three of them sat at the long table as Faith served her first meal at Broken Ridge Ranch. She watched nervously as Adam took his first bite of cornbread. "This is good," he said simply, but the approval in his voice warmed her. "Better than what I've been cooking, that's for certain." Timothy nodded enthusiastically, his mouth already full. "Best meal I've had in ages, Miss Alden. Call me Faith, please." She smiled at the boy. "And thank you both." After supper, Faith insisted on cleaning up alone, shooing both males from the kitchen. As she washed the dishes, she could hear Adam's deep voice on the porch, patiently explaining something to Timothy about tomorrow's cattle work. There was kindness in that voice, she realized, a gentle authority that expected much but gave much in return. Later, as Faith retired to her cabin, lantern in hand, she was surprised to find a stack of split logs by her door and a kettle of hot water on her stove. A small note rested beside it. "Thought you might want a proper wash after traveling. A.Z." The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Perhaps this new life wouldn't be so terrible after all. The following days fell into a rhythm. Faith rose before dawn to start breakfast at the main house, spent her mornings cleaning and organizing, prepared lunch for Adam, Timothy, and occasionally the 2 other ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse, Hank, a weathered man of 50 with a perpetually sunburned nose, and Diego, a skilled horseman from New Mexico who spoke little but smiled often. In the afternoons, Faith worked on mending clothes, planning meals, and slowly transforming the stark main house into something warmer. With Adam's permission, she repurposed some flour sacks into simple curtains for the kitchen windows and arranged wildflowers in a mason jar on the table. Adam himself remained something of a mystery. He was unfailingly polite, even kind in his way, but reserved. He spent long days working with the cattle, checking fence lines and handling the business aspects of the ranch. Occasionally, Faith would catch him watching her with an unreadable expression, but he would quickly look away when their eyes met. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Faith was kneading dough for tomorrow's bread when Adam entered the kitchen earlier than usual, his clothes dusty from the day's work. "You're making changes," he observed, nodding toward the curtains and the freshly scrubbed floor that now shone in the lamplight. Faith's hands stilled. "I hope you don't mind. I thought it might make things more comfortable. I don't mind." He hung his hat on a peg by the door. "My mother used to say a house needs a woman's touch to become a home." Was she right? Faith asked, resuming her kneading. A hint of a smile touched Adam's lips. "Seems that way. Place hasn't felt this much like a home since." He trailed off, then changed tack. "You settling in all right?" "Got everything you need?" "Yes, thank you. Everyone has been very kind." Faith hesitated, then added, "Timothy told me how you took him in after his father died. That was generous of you." Adam shrugged, looking uncomfortable with the praise. Boy needed someone. I know what it's like to be young and alone. Faith wanted to ask more, but Adam's expression had closed off again. Instead, she said, I noticed the garden plot behind the house hasn't been used this year. Would it be all right if I planted some vegetables for next season? Store-bought is fine, but fresh would be better. The garden was my mother's idea too, Adam said quietly. Never had time to keep it up properly. He moved to the window, looking out at the setting sun. You're welcome to it. Whatever you need for supplies, just let me know. Thank you. Faith covered the dough with a cloth to rise. Will you be wanting coffee with your supper? Adam turned, and for a moment, something vulnerable flickered across his face. You know, no one's asked me what I want for a long time. The simple statement hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Well, Faith said softly, perhaps it's time someone did. That night, Faith lay awake in her cabin, thinking about Adam Zephyr. There was a depth to him that intrigued her, a solidity and quiet strength, but also wounds that hadn't fully healed. She recognized the look of someone who had learned to live with loss. She saw it in her own mirror each morning. As autumn deepened, Faith found herself settling into life at Broken Ridge Ranch with surprising ease. The work was hard but satisfying, and there was comfort in knowing exactly what was expected of her. Timothy had become something of a younger brother, eagerly telling her about his day with the cattle or horses each evening. Even the taciturn Hank had warmed to her after she'd mended his favorite shirt and included molasses cookies with his lunch pail. Adam remained more difficult to know, though Faith found herself increasingly drawn to him. He was fair in his dealings, generous with praise when deserved, and possessed a dry wit that occasionally surfaced during supper conversations. She noticed how he made time each evening to help Timothy with his reading, and how he never failed to thank her for meals, no matter how simple. One Saturday afternoon, in early November, Faith was hanging laundry behind her cabin when she heard hoofbeats approaching. To her surprise, it was her brother Samuel, looking uncomfortable and out of place on a borrowed horse. Faith, he said stiffly, dismounting, I've come to check on you. Faith pinned the last sheet to the line before responding. That's thoughtful of you, Samuel, considering you threw me out with barely a word 3 weeks ago. Samuel had the grace to look ashamed. Margaret and we've had words about that. She regrets her harshness. Does she? Faith raised an eyebrow. Or does the Reverend's wife continue to comment on your unchristian behavior toward your only sister? Both, perhaps, Samuel sighed, removing his hat. I handled things poorly, Faith. I was unprepared for your arrival, struggling with the store, and Margaret was. He trailed off. But that's no excuse. Faith's anger softened slightly. Her brother had always been stubborn and proud, and admitting fault didn't come easily to him. Would you like some coffee? I was about to make some. Inside her cabin, Samuel looked around with obvious surprise. This is nicer than I expected. What did you expect? A hovel? Faith set the kettle to boil. Mr. Zephyr runs a respectable ranch. Everything is proper. So I see. Samuel sat at her small table. The women in town have been talking. They say you're living alone, working for an unmarried man. Faith stiffened. I have my own cabin, as you can plainly see, and there's Timothy and the ranch hands as well. It's all perfectly respectable. Even so, people talk. Samuel looked uncomfortable. Margaret and I have discussed it. If you wish to return to town, I can arrange for you to stay with the Wilcoxes. Their daughter just married, so they have a spare room. Mrs. Wilcox needs help with her sewing business. Faith poured the coffee, taking time to compose her thoughts. I appreciate the offer, Samuel, but I'm content here. The work suits me, I'm treated well, and I'm paid fairly. Faith, be sensible. A single woman living on a ranch with a bachelor, it's not appropriate. What would Mother say? Mother would say that honest work and a safe roof overhead matter more than idle gossip, Faith replied sharply. Besides, I doubt Mrs. Wilcox pays as well as Mr. Zephyr. Before Samuel could respond, a knock came at the door. Faith opened it to find Adam standing there, his expression darkening when he saw Samuel. "Mr. Alden," Adam said coolly, "this is a surprise." "Mr. Zephyr," Samuel stood, "I was just checking on my sister's welfare. 3 weeks late by my count." Adam's tone was even, but Faith could sense his displeasure. Samuel bristled. "Family matters are private, Mr. Zephyr. Not when they involve leaving a young woman without resources or shelter." Adam turned to Faith, his voice softening. "I don't mean to intrude. I just wanted to let you know I'm riding into town for supplies. Is there anything you need?" Faith was touched by his consideration. "Some more thread would be welcome, blue if they have it, and perhaps some cinnamon for baking. Consider it done." Adam nodded, then faced Samuel again. "Your sister has proven herself an invaluable addition to this ranch, Mr. Alden. She's respected and well cared for here. Should she ever wish to leave, that would be her choice, not mine and certainly not yours." After Adam departed, Samuel looked at Faith with new eyes. "He seems protective of you." "He's a good man who believes in treating people fairly," Faith replied, unwilling to examine the warmth that had spread through her at Adam's defense. "Which reminds me, I should be getting back to work. The men will be hungry when they return." Samuel donned his hat. "The offer stands, Faith, if you change your mind." "I won't," she said firmly. "But thank you for coming, Samuel. It means something that you did." As Samuel rode away, Faith watched him go with mixed emotions. Part of her wanted to mend their relationship. He was her only blood family left, after all. But another part recognized that sometimes family wasn't about blood but about who stood beside you when you needed them most. And when she'd needed someone most, it had been Adam Zephyr who had said, "You'll stay here now." That evening, Faith prepared a special supper of roast beef, mashed potatoes, and apple pie, Adam's favorite, though he'd never explicitly said so. She'd noticed how he always took second helpings when she made it. When Adam returned from town, he brought not only the thread and cinnamon she'd requested, but also a small potted geranium with vibrant red blooms. "Thought it might brighten your cabin," he said gruffly, setting it on her kitchen counter. Mrs. Thornton was selling them. Faith touched the delicate petals, deeply moved by the gesture. "It's lovely, thank you." At supper, after Timothy had excused himself to finish his chores, Faith broached the subject of her brother's visit. "I want to apologize for Samuel. He wasn't very gracious." Adam sipped his coffee. "No need to apologize for him. A man should stand on his own words and actions. He offered me a position in town with the seamstress." Faith watched Adam's face carefully. "I declined." Something flickered in Adam's eyes, relief, perhaps. "I'm glad to hear it, but if you ever want to leave, Faith, you should feel free to do so. I won't hold you here." "I know," she smiled. "That's part of why I want to stay." Later that night, as Faith prepared for bed, she heard a commotion outside, horses approaching at speed, men's voices raised in alarm. Wrapping a shawl around her nightdress, she hurried to her door just as Timothy came running from the direction of the bunkhouse. "Miss Faith, it's Mr. Zephyr, he's hurt." Hank and Diego found him by the South Creek. Heart racing, Faith followed Timothy to the main house, where Hank and Diego were helping Adam through the door. His face was bruised and bloodied, his shirt torn and stained with dirt and blood. "What happened?" Faith gasped, immediately clearing the table. "Bushwhacked," Adam grunted as the men helped him into a chair. "3 of them just past Miller's Crossing, took the supply money." "I'll fetch Doc Sullivan," Diego said, already heading for the door. "No," Adam called. "Too far, too dark. I'll be fine till morning." Faith took charge. "Timothy, get hot water and clean towels. Hank, the whiskey from Mr. Zephyr's study. Diego, stay with the horses, make sure they're cooled down and stabled." As the men moved to follow her instructions, Faith gently examined Adam's injuries. A deep cut above his right eyebrow, a split lip, bruised ribs from the feel of his wince when she touched his side, and scraped knuckles that told her he'd fought back hard. "This will sting," she warned, cleaning the cut with whiskey-soaked cloth. Adam hissed but didn't pull away. "You've done this before." "My father was a doctor," Faith explained, working methodically. "I often assisted him. Hold still now." She cleaned and bandaged his wounds, her touch gentle but firm. When she had to help him remove his shirt to bind his ribs, she tried to maintain a professional demeanor, but the intimacy of tending to him this way stirred something deep within her. His chest was broad and muscled, marked with old scars that spoke of a hard life. "You're good at this," Adam murmured as she finished wrapping his ribs. "It helps to have a cooperative patient." Faith handed him a glass of whiskey. "Drink this. It will help with the pain." "Did they take everything?" Timothy asked anxiously, hovering nearby. Adam shook his head, then winced at the movement. "Not everything. I had most of the money in my boot. Old trick my father taught me, but they got enough to feel satisfied." "Did you recognize any of them?" Hank asked, his weathered face grim. "No, strangers." Adam took another sip of whiskey. "But they knew who I was, called me by name." Faith's hand stilled. "That means it wasn't random, they targeted you specifically." Adam's eyes met hers, and she saw something in them, not fear, but a weariness that suggested this wasn't the first time he'd faced such trouble. "It would seem so. Why would anyone want to hurt you?" Timothy's young voice was filled with indignation. "Some men don't need much reason, Tim." Adam attempted a reassuring smile that turned into a grimace. "Don't worry, we'll sort it out." "You should rest now," Faith said firmly. "Timothy, help me get Mr. Zephyr to his room." Between them, they managed to get Adam to his bedroom, a spartanly furnished room with a large bed, a chest of drawers, and a rifle mounted on the wall. Faith had cleaned this room several times but always felt like an intruder. Now, helping Adam ease onto the bed, the feeling intensified. "I'll bring you some willow bark tea for the pain," she said, adjusting his pillow. "Try not to move too much." "Faith," Adam caught her wrist as she turned to go. His touch sent warmth spreading up her arm. "Thank you." "Rest now," she repeated softly, reluctantly pulling away. The next morning, Faith woke early and hurried to the main house. She found Adam already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, looking pale but determined. "You should be in bed," she scolded, immediately filling a plate with the breakfast she'd prepared. "Can't afford the luxury." Adam winced as he shifted in his chair. Cattle still need tending and we're short-handed as it is. Hank and Diego can manage for a day. Faith set the plate before him. "And I've sent Timothy for the doctor." Adam looked like he wanted to argue but instead began eating. After a few bites, he said, "Your brother, did he mention anything unusual happening in town?" "New people asking questions," Faith considered. "No, nothing specific, but he seemed unsettled, more than just about my living situation. The men who attacked me knew the ranch had just sold 36 head. That information wasn't widely known." Adam's blue eyes were troubled. "Someone in town is talking to the wrong people." Before Faith could respond, hoofbeats announced Timothy's return with Doc Sullivan, a gruff man in his 60s with bushy white whiskers and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "So you've gotten yourself into trouble again, Zephyr," the doctor said by way of greeting. "Let's see the damage." As the doctor examined Adam, Faith busied herself making fresh coffee. She couldn't help overhearing their conversation. "Ribs are bruised, not broken. You're lucky," Doc Sullivan muttered. "That cut will leave a scar if you're not careful. Head hurt, some," Adam admitted. "Nothing I haven't dealt with before." The doctor's voice lowered. "These the same fellows as last time?" "Don't think so. Different approach. Last time was more personal." Faith's hand stilled on the coffee pot. "Last time. This had happened before." "Well, Sheriff Briggs should hear about this," Doc Sullivan said. 3 attacks on ranchers in 2 months is no coincidence." "I'll ride into town tomorrow," Adam promised. "You'll do no such thing," Faith interrupted, unable to keep silent any longer. "You're in no condition to ride anywhere." Both men looked at her in surprise, as if they'd forgotten she was there. "Miss Alden is right," Doc Sullivan said after a moment. "You need at least 3 days of rest. Those ribs won't heal if you're bouncing on a horse." Adam's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. "Fine. But I need to get word to Briggs." "I'll go," Faith offered. "I can take the wagon into town with Timothy and speak to the sheriff myself." "No." Adam's response was immediate and firm. "I don't want you involved in this." "I'm already involved," Faith countered. "I work here. I tend to this house and the people in it. That includes making sure you don't do something foolish that will worsen your injuries." Doc Sullivan chuckled. "She's got you there, Adam. And she's right, sending her with the boy is safer than you going alone in your condition." Adam looked between them, clearly outnumbered. "Fine. But you take Hank with you too, and you come straight back. No lingering in town." Faith nodded, trying not to show her relief. In truth, she was worried about him, and the idea of leaving him alone while injured didn't sit well with her. But someone needed to alert the sheriff. And if Adam wouldn't stay put otherwise, this was the best compromise. After the doctor left, with strict instructions for Adam to rest, and for Faith to change his bandages twice daily, Faith prepared to leave for town. She dressed in her best remaining dress of forest green wool that brought out the copper highlights in her hair and pinned her hair neatly beneath her bonnet. Adam watched her preparations from the doorway of his study, leaning heavily against the frame. "Be careful in town," he said quietly. "Some folks might not take kindly to you speaking on my behalf." Faith paused, hairpins in hand. "Why is that?" Adam's gaze dropped. "I'm not universally loved in Silver Creek, made some enemies when I first arrived. Old grudges die hard in small towns." "What kind of enemies?" Faith pressed. Adam sighed. "The kind that think I don't deserve what I've built here, the kind that spread rumors and make trouble." He straightened, wincing slightly. "Just be careful what you say and who you say it to." Faith finished pinning her hair, considering his words. "Is that why you took me in?" "Because you know what it's like to be the subject of town gossip." A ghost of a smile touched Adam's lips. "Partly, and partly because I know what it's like to be alone with nowhere to turn." His voice softened. "You remind me of someone, Faith. Someone who didn't give up, no matter how hard things got." "Your mother," Faith guessed. Adam shook his head. "Myself." The simple statement hung between them, a moment of raw honesty that felt more intimate than their physical proximity. Faith felt something shift between them, a deepening of understanding, perhaps even trust. "I'll be careful," she promised, "and I'll come straight back." The journey to Silver Creek was tense. Hank rode ahead of the wagon, rifle across his saddle, while Timothy handled the reins with Faith beside him. They spoke little, each lost in their own thoughts. Faith couldn't stop thinking about what Adam had said about enemies, about seeing himself in her. There were layers to Adam Zephyr that she was only beginning to uncover. In town, Faith went directly to the sheriff's office while Hank and Timothy waited with the wagon. Sheriff Briggs was a heavyset man with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened attentively as Faith relayed the details of Adam's attack. "Third such incident this month," he said grimly when she finished. "Danvers lost a whole payroll 2 weeks back, and the Peterson boy was beaten pretty bad when he was moving cattle money. Mr. Zephyr mentioned something about this not being the first time he's had trouble," Faith ventured. Sheriff Briggs studied her carefully. "How long have you been working for Zephyr, Miss Alden?" "Nearly a month now." "And he hasn't told you about the fire? Or why he had to rebuild the north pasture fence twice this year?" Faith shook her head, a chill running through her. "No, he's been private about the ranch's history," the sheriff sighed. "Not my place to tell his business. But you tell him from me that keeping secrets from his own household isn't helping anyone. These attacks are getting bolder, and everyone associated with Broken Ridge could be at risk." Faith's hands tightened in her lap. "Do you have any idea who's behind them?" "I have suspicions," Briggs said carefully, "but nothing I can act on yet. You tell Zephyr I'll be out to see him tomorrow, and Miss Alden—" his expression softened slightly. "Be watchful. Sometimes innocent folks get caught in old vendettas." As Faith left the sheriff's office, her mind swirled with questions. What vendettas? What fire? Adam had clearly been dealing with more than just the ordinary hardships of ranch life, and for some reason he'd chosen not to share those burdens with her. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with a well-dressed man on the boardwalk. "Pardon me," she murmured, stepping aside. "Miss Alden, isn't it?" The man smiled, revealing teeth too perfect to belong to a frontier town. "I've heard about you. I'm James Blackwell, owner of the Silver Nugget Saloon and several other establishments in town." Faith had heard whispers about Blackwell, a businessman with influential connections who had arrived in Silver Creek 2 years ago and quickly accumulated property and power. Some said his money came from less than reputable sources back east. "Mr. Blackwell," she acknowledged with a polite nod, eager to move on. "I understand you're working out at Broken Ridge Ranch," Blackwell continued, blocking her path subtly. "How is Zephyr these days?" "Recovering well from his accident." The way he said accident made Faith's skin crawl. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackwell, but I must be going. My companions are waiting." Blackwell stepped aside, but his smile remained fixed. "Of course. But should you ever find yourself in need of alternative employment, Miss Alden, my establishments are always looking for respectable young ladies. The pay would be significantly better than what a struggling rancher could offer. I'm quite satisfied with my current position, thank you." Faith moved past him, fighting the urge to hurry. "A pity," Blackwell called after her. "Zephyr's luck won't hold forever. When Broken Ridge falls, and it will, you might want a more secure situation." Faith didn't respond, but her heart hammered in her chest as she rejoined Hank and Timothy at the wagon. Blackwell's words had sounded distinctly like a threat, not just to Adam but to the ranch and everyone connected to it. On the ride back to Broken Ridge, Faith debated whether to tell Adam about the encounter. Would it worry him unnecessarily while he was trying to heal? Or was it vital information he needed to know? "Everything all right, Miss Faith?" Timothy asked, noticing her distraction. "You seem troubled." Faith forced a smile. "Just thinking about everything the sheriff said, and we should stop at my brother's store for some medical supplies for Mr. Zephyr." At the general store, Samuel was clearly surprised to see her. "Faith, I didn't expect you back in town so soon." "It's not a social call," Faith explained, selecting bandages and witch hazel. "Mr. Zephyr was attacked last night. Robbers." Samuel's face paled slightly. "Attacked? Is he badly hurt?" "He'll recover. But it's concerning. The sheriff says it's not the first such incident." Samuel busied himself wrapping her purchases. "These are dangerous times. All the more reason for you to consider my offer to return to town." I'm needed at the ranch now more than ever, Faith replied firmly. Samuel, have you heard anything about someone targeting ranchers? Or about Mr. Zephyr specifically? Her brother wouldn't meet her eyes. I don't involve myself in such matters. Samuel, Faith lowered her voice. If you know something that could help, you should tell me. A man's life could depend on it. Samuel glanced around the empty store, then leaned closer. All I know is that Blackwell and his associates have been buying up properties all around Silver Creek. Some say willingly sold, others less so. There are rumors about a railroad coming through and certain parcels becoming very valuable. Like Broken Ridge, Samuel nodded. Zephyr's land controls the only viable pass through the eastern ridge. Without it, any railroad would have to go 20 miles around. Faith thought of Blackwell's thinly veiled threat and felt sick. Does the sheriff know about this? Briggs is a good man, but he's one lawman against Blackwell's money and connections. Samuel finished wrapping her purchases. Be careful, Faith. Zephyr's made powerful enemies by refusing to sell. By the time they returned to the ranch, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the valley. Faith found Adam in the main house, seated in a chair by the fireplace, despite her instructions to rest in bed. His face was drawn with pain, though he tried to hide it when she entered. "You're back," he said, relief evident in his voice. "What did Briggs say?" Faith set down her purchases and removed her bonnet. "He'll be out to see you tomorrow. Said there have been similar attacks on other ranchers." She hesitated, then added, "He also said I should ask you about a fire and about the north pasture fence." Adam's expression darkened. "Briggs talks too much. Or perhaps you don't talk enough," Faith countered, moving to check his bandages. "Hold still, I need to change these." As she worked, her fingers gentle on his bruised skin, Adam remained silent. Faith could feel the tension in him, the internal debate about how much to reveal. "I met James Blackwell in town," she said finally, applying fresh witch hazel to his cut. "He seemed very interested in your accident and in offering me alternative employment." Adam stiffened beneath her touch. "Stay away from Blackwell, the man's poison." "So I gathered." Faith secured the fresh bandage. "He made it quite clear that he expects Broken Ridge to fall, as he put it. Something about your luck running out." Adam's jaw clenched. "Faith, my brother mentioned rumors about a railroad," she continued, meeting his gaze directly. "And how your land is the only viable route through the eastern ridge. Is that what this is about? Is Blackwell trying to force you to sell?" For a long moment, Adam said nothing. Then, with a heavy sigh, he nodded. "It started about a year ago. Blackwell approached me with an offer generous on the surface, but far below what the land would be worth if the railroad comes through. I refused. And then the accidents began. A fire in the storage barn, fence cuts that let cattle escape, missing supplies, small things at first meant to wear me down." Adam's eyes hardened. "Then 3 months ago, Timothy was thrown from a horse that had always been gentle. The cinch had been partially cut." Faith gasped. "He could have been killed." "Exactly. That's when I knew Blackwell was willing to hurt innocent people to get what he wants." Adam ran a hand through his hair. "I should have told you the risk before you came here. I just didn't want to frighten you away." The admission hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that neither was ready to address directly. "I'm not easily frightened, Adam Zephyr," Faith said softly. "And I don't abandon people who need me." Their eyes held, and Faith felt something shift again, the invisible barrier between employer and employee thinning to reveal something deeper, more personal. "I believe you," Adam said finally. "But I need you to understand what you're facing by staying here. Blackwell doesn't make idle threats, and now that you've refused him publicly, he'll see you as aligned with me." "I am aligned with you," Faith said simply. "This is my home now, too." The words surprised her even as she spoke them, but she realized they were true. In the short time she'd been at Broken Ridge, it had become more of a home than Samuel's house ever could have been, more than anywhere since her parents' house in Boston. Adam's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Faith thought he might reach for her hand. Instead, he straightened in his chair, the rancher's mask sliding back into place. "Thank you for going to town," he said formally, "and for tending to my injuries. I'll have Hank take the first watch tonight and Diego the second, just to be safe." Faith recognized the dismissal and nodded. "I'll bring you some supper in a little while. Try to rest in the meantime." As she turned to go, Adam called after her, "Faith." She looked back to find his eyes on her, unusually vulnerable. "I'm glad you're here." "So am I," she replied softly. And somehow, those 3 words carried more weight than any declaration. Over the next few days, Faith found herself in the unexpected position of running Broken Ridge Ranch. With Adam confined to limited activity by his injuries, she took on additional responsibilities, coordinating with Hank and Diego about the daily work, managing the household accounts, and ensuring everyone was fed and cared for. Sheriff Briggs visited as promised, bringing news that further unsettled them all. 2 more ranches had been approached with buyout offers, and one had accepted after their barn mysteriously burned to the ground. "Blackwell's getting bolder," the sheriff said grimly. "He's got 3 men from back east working for him now, rough customers with gun experience." "The men who attacked me," Adam surmised. Briggs nodded. "Most likely. I've wired the territorial governor for assistance, but it could be weeks before anything comes of it." "We can't wait weeks," Adam said, frustration evident. "Every day Blackwell goes unchecked, he grows stronger, and winter's coming. If we lose any more cattle or have any more accidents, Broken Ridge might not survive till spring." The sheriff looked sympathetic but helpless. "I'm doing what I can, Adam. In the meantime, keep your people close and your rifle closer." After Briggs left, Adam called everyone to the main house for a council of sorts. Hank, Diego, Timothy, Faith, and even Mrs. Thornton, who had ridden out to deliver supplies, gathered around the dining table. "I won't pretend the situation isn't serious," Adam began. "Blackwell wants Broken Ridge, and he's proven he'll use underhanded means to get it. Each of you has a choice to make. Anyone who wants to leave has my blessing and a month's wages to help them start fresh elsewhere." Silence fell over the room. Faith watched the others, wondering if anyone would take the offer. Hank was the first to speak. "Been working cattle for 37 years, Mr. Zephyr. Never ran from trouble yet. Don't intend to start now." Diego nodded in agreement. "My family is in Santa Fe. I send them money each month. Where else would I find work so good with a boss who treats me fair? I stay." Timothy looked outraged at the very suggestion. "I'm not going anywhere." "This is my home." All eyes turned to Faith. She met Adam's gaze steadily. "I've already told you my decision. I stay." Mrs. Thornton cleared her throat. "Well, I don't live here, but my Henry and I stand with Broken Ridge. That Blackwell's been squeezing businesses in town too, raising rents, buying up debt. Someone needs to take a stand." Adam's expression was a mixture of gratitude and concern. "Thank you, all of you. But understand what you're agreeing to. Things might get worse before they get better." "Then we face it together," Faith said firmly. "Broken Ridge is worth fighting for." The conviction in her voice seemed to bolster Adam. He straightened in his chair, the natural leadership that had built the ranch from nothing reasserting itself. "All right then. We need a plan. First, no one works alone, always in pairs at minimum. Second, we move the cattle from the outer pastures closer to the main buildings. Third, we set up a rotation for night watches. And fourth," He looked directly at Faith. "I want you to learn to shoot." Faith blinked in surprise. "Shoot? A gun? A rifle, specifically?" Adam's tone brooked no argument. "If trouble comes and I'm not nearby, I want you able to defend yourself." The thought was simultaneously terrifying and empowering. Faith had never so much as held a firearm before, but she understood the necessity. "Very well." "When do we start?" "Tomorrow," Adam decided. "Hank will teach you the basics. He's the best shot among us." The meeting concluded with practical arrangements for implementing their plan. As everyone dispersed to their duties, Adam caught Faith's arm gently. "A word, please." When they were alone, he said, "I need you to promise me something. If things go badly, if it becomes clear we can't win against Blackwell, I want you to leave. Go back to Boston or to your brothers or anywhere safe." Faith frowned. "I won't abandon everyone here. This isn't your fight, Faith." "It became my fight when Blackwell threatened the place I call home." She held his gaze. "Besides, you're in no position to make demands. You can barely walk without wincing." A reluctant smile tugged at Adam's lips. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "I believe the word you're looking for is determined," Faith corrected primly, but she smiled too. "Now, if you're finished trying to send me away, I have bread to bake and a rifle lesson to prepare for." True to his word, Adam arranged for Faith's first shooting lesson the following afternoon. Hank proved a patient teacher, showing her how to load, aim, and fire Adam's Winchester rifle. Her first shots went wide, but by the end of an hour, she was hitting the broad side of a tree stump with reasonable consistency. "Not bad for a city girl," Hank commented, genuine approval in his weathered face. "Practice every day, and you'll be defending the homestead in no time." That evening, Faith's arms ached from the rifle's kick, but she felt a new sense of capability. As she prepared supper, she found herself humming softly an old lullaby her mother used to sing. "That's pretty," Adam said from the doorway, startling her. He moved more easily now, his body beginning to heal. "What is it?" "Just a song my mother sang," Faith replied, turning back to the stew. "Hank says I'm a natural with the rifle. He told me, said you've got a steady hand and a good eye." Adam moved to stand beside her at the stove, close enough that Faith could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Thank you for doing this. I know it's not what you expected when you came here." Faith stirred the stew, acutely aware of his proximity. "Very little about my life has gone as expected lately. I'm learning to adapt." "You're doing more than adapting," Adam said quietly. "You're thriving. This place, it's different with you here. Better." Faith looked up, meeting his gaze. There was something in his blue eyes that made her heart beat faster. Admiration, certainly, but something deeper too. Something that made her wonder what it would be like if he closed the small distance between them. The moment stretched, charged with unspoken possibility. Then the back door banged open as Timothy bounded in, and the spell was broken. "Miss Faith, I found fresh eggs in the new nesting box, just like you said might happen." The boy proudly held up a half-dozen eggs. "Can we have them for breakfast tomorrow?" Faith smiled, stepping back from Adam. "Of course. That was good work, Timothy. Now wash up for supper." As Timothy raced off to comply, Faith glanced at Adam and found him watching her with an expression that sent warmth spreading through her. Whatever was growing between them would have to wait, but it was definitely growing. The days fell into a new rhythm at Broken Ridge. Everyone worked with heightened vigilance, always in pairs or groups. Faith continued her rifle practice every afternoon, gradually improving her accuracy. Adam regained his strength, though the cut above his eye would indeed leave a scar, just as Doc Sullivan had predicted. Almost 2 weeks passed without incident, and Faith began to hope that perhaps Blackwell had decided Broken Ridge was too much trouble. That hope was shattered one crisp November morning when Diego rode in at a gallop, his usually calm demeanor shaken. "Senor Zephyr, the North Creek is being dammed." Adam, who had been repairing tack on the porch, was instantly alert. "Where? By whom?" "At the narrow pass where it enters our land. 3 men with tools and dynamite. They have already begun." Faith, who had come outside at Diego's arrival, understood immediately the implications. The North Creek was Broken Ridge's main water source. Without it, the cattle would suffer, and so would their chances of surviving the winter. "Hank," Adam called, already striding toward the stable. "Saddle up. Faith, get my rifle." Faith hurried inside, retrieving Adam's Winchester and his gun belt. By the time she returned, both men were mounted, with Diego waiting nearby. "Timothy stays with you," Adam instructed as she handed him the rifle. "Keep the doors locked. If we're not back by sundown, we will be," Hank interrupted firmly. Adam nodded, his eyes meeting Faith's. For a moment, words seemed inadequate. "Be careful," she said finally. "Always." Adam touched the brim of his hat, then the 3 men rode out at a gallop. The hours that followed were some of the longest of Faith's life. She tried to occupy herself with routine tasks: baking bread, mending a torn shirt, checking the garden plot she'd begun preparing for spring. Timothy was equally restless, alternating between watching the horizon and helping with chores. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds had gathered, and a cold wind picked up. Faith stood on the porch, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders, straining to see any sign of the returning men. The first fat raindrops were just beginning to fall when she spotted them, 3 riders approaching slowly from the north. "Timothy," she called. "They're coming back." As they drew closer, Faith realized something was wrong. Adam was slumped forward in his saddle, with Hank riding close beside him, one hand steadying him. Her heart lurched. "He's hurt," Timothy cried, already running toward them. Faith rushed forward as Hank and Diego helped Adam from his horse. His shirt was soaked with blood on the left side, his face gray with pain. "What happened?" Faith demanded, helping them guide him toward the house. "Bushwhacked again," Hank said grimly. "They were waiting for us. Bullet caught him in the side." Inside, they laid Adam on the kitchen table, the only surface large enough and sturdy enough for what needed to be done. Faith cut away his shirt with steady hands, revealing an ugly wound just below his ribs. "The bullet's still in there," she said, her medical knowledge from assisting her father coming back to her. "We need to get it out before infection sets in. Timothy, boil water, lots of it. Diego, I need all the clean cloths you can find. Hank, the whiskey." As they scrambled to obey, Adam's eyes fluttered open. "Faith," he murmured, reaching for her hand. "The creek." "Don't worry about the creek now," she soothed, squeezing his fingers briefly before returning to her preparations. "We stopped them," he insisted weakly. "Blew up their dam instead of the creek, but Blackwell's men, they'll be coming." Faith's blood ran cold. "Coming here now," Adam tried to nod, wincing with the effort. "Probably need to prepare," Hank returned with the whiskey. "Mr. Zephyr's right. They were mighty angry when we ruined their plan, said they'd finish this today." Faith forced herself to focus on the immediate crisis. "First, we save his life, then we worry about Blackwell's men." She looked at Hank. "Can you remove a bullet?" The old cowboy shook his head. "Never had to. But I've seen it done." "I have," Faith said, pouring whiskey over her hands. "My father taught me, but I'll need your help, all of you." The next hour was a blur of intense concentration as Faith extracted the bullet from Adam's side. It had missed vital organs but caused significant blood loss. Throughout the procedure, Adam drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally groaning but never crying out. Finally, Faith dropped the bloodied bullet into a bowl with a metallic clink. It's out. Now we clean and stitch the wound." As she worked, the storm intensified outside, rain lashing against the windows and thunder rumbling across the valley. By the time she finished, lightning was illuminating the kitchen in stark flashes, and Adam had fallen into an exhausted sleep. "We need to move him to his bed," Faith said, wiping her bloodied hands on a cloth. With Hank and Diego's help, they carefully carried Adam to his bedroom and settled him under the quilts. Faith checked his pulse steady if a bit weak and placed a hand on his forehead, relieved to find no sign of fever yet. "Someone should stay with him," she said. "I will take first watch," Diego offered. "You should rest, Miss Faith. You look exhausted." Faith knew he was right. Her hands were beginning to shake from the strain, but she was reluctant to leave Adam's side. "Wake me if anything changes. Anything at all." She had just reached the hallway when a pounding at the front door froze them all in place. Timothy, who had been keeping watch at the window, turned with wide eyes. "It's them, Blackwell and 4 other men." Hank reached for his rifle. "Diego, stay with Mr. Zephyr. Timothy, get behind the wood stove." "Miss Faith, I'll answer it," Faith said, a strange calm settling over her. "They might be less likely to start shooting if a woman opens the door." "Miss Faith, no," Hank began, but she was already moving toward the door, smoothing her hair and wiping the last traces of blood from her hands. Taking a deep breath, Faith opened the door just wide enough to see through. Rain poured down outside, and on the porch stood 5 men, Blackwell in his fine coat, and 4 rough-looking individuals with guns visible at their hips. "Mr. Blackwell," Faith said coolly, "this is an unexpected visit, especially in such weather." "Miss Alden." Blackwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We've come to speak with Zephyr. Urgent business." "I'm afraid Mr. Zephyr is indisposed at present. Perhaps you could return tomorrow." Blackwell's smile tightened. "I think now would be better. My associates and I have traveled all this way in the rain, after all." "Your associates caused significant damage to Broken Ridge property today and shot Mr. Zephyr," Faith replied, dropping all pretense of politeness. "So you'll forgive me if I don't invite you in for tea." One of the men behind Blackwell stepped forward menacingly. "Listen, lady, we ain't asking. Either you fetch Zephyr or we come in and get him ourselves." Faith held her ground, though her heart raced. "Mr. Zephyr is too badly wounded to speak with anyone. Your bullet saw to that. And this house is well defended, sir. I suggest you leave peacefully." Blackwell studied her, something like admiration flickering across his face. "You've got spirit, Miss Alden. It's a shame you've chosen the losing side in this matter." He gestured to his men. "Search the outbuildings. Find the cattle. We'll see how long Zephyr's resolve holds when his livelihood is threatened." "You can't do that," Faith protested. "That's stealing. It's business," Blackwell corrected smoothly. "Unfortunate but necessary," Zephyr was warned. As the men moved to follow his orders, Faith closed the door and bolted it, turning to Hank with fear in her eyes. "They're going after the cattle." "Let them try," Hank said grimly. "The herds are in the south pasture. In this storm they won't find them easily." A shout from outside drew their attention. Through the window they could see one of Blackwell's men running back from the direction of the bunkhouse, pointing frantically. A moment later, a gunshot cracked and the front window shattered. "Get down," Hank yelled, pulling Faith to the floor as more shots followed. They must have found something to rile them. Faith crawled toward the hallway. "I need to check on Adam." More shots rang out, wood splintering as bullets struck the house. Faith reached Adam's room to find Diego positioned at the window with his rifle returning fire. "Adam," Faith called, moving to the bed. He was awake, struggling to sit up despite his wound. "What's happening?" "Blackwell and his men," Faith explained, helping him. "They're shooting at the house." "My gun," Adam grunted, pain etched on his face. In the drawer. Faith retrieved his revolver, pressing it into his hand. You shouldn't be moving, you'll reopen the wound. Can't just lie here while they attack my home. Adam's voice was weak but determined. Help me to the window. Outside, the gunfire had intensified. Faith heard Hank shouting something, then Timothy's terrified cry from the kitchen. Making a split-second decision, she left Adam with Diego and ran back to the main room. Timothy was huddled behind the wood stove, his young face pale with fear. Hank was at the front window, exchanging shots with Blackwell's men who had taken cover behind the water trough and corral fence. They're trying to circle around back, Hank called. Miss Faith, get the boy to the cellar. Faith grabbed Timothy's hand. Come on. We need to. Her words cut off as the back door burst open, revealing one of Blackwell's men, pistol raised. Without thinking, Faith reached for the rifle leaning against the wall, the one she'd been practicing with, and brought it up in one fluid motion. The shot rang out, deafening in the confined space. The man staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, then fell to his knees. Run! Faith shouted to Timothy, pushing him toward the hallway. Outside, the shooting had paused. Faith could hear Blackwell shouting orders, his men regrouping. The wounded man at the back door had crawled away, leaving a trail of blood on the floor. Faith reached Adam's room to find him standing at the window with Diego's support, his revolver in hand. He looked at her, eyes widening at the rifle in her grip. Faith, are you hurt? She shook her head. No, but they tried to come in the back door. I shot one of them. Before Adam could respond, a new sound joined the storm's fury hoofbeats, many of them, approaching fast from the direction of town. Through the rain-streaked window, Faith could make out a group of riders, at least a dozen, led by a familiar figure. It's the sheriff, Timothy cried, pointing, and Mr. Thornton, and there's my friend Eddie's pa. Indeed, Sheriff Briggs had arrived with what appeared to be half the men of Silver Creek, all armed and determined. Faith watched in disbelief as Blackwell and his remaining men found themselves suddenly outnumbered and surrounded. Drop your weapons, Briggs's voice carried over the rain. You're under arrest, Blackwell. We've got witnesses to the shooting at the creek and to your threats against Broken Ridge. For a tense moment, it seemed Blackwell might order his men to fight. Then, with a curse, he threw down his pistol, his men reluctantly following suit. As the impromptu posse took Blackwell and his men into custody, Faith turned to find Adam watching her, his face pale from blood loss but his eyes bright with something that made her breath catch. You saved us, he said simply. All of us. Faith shook her head. It was everyone, Hank, Diego, even Timothy keeping watch, and the sheriff arriving when he did. But you stood your ground, Adam insisted, wincing as he tried to move closer to her. You faced down Blackwell and shot a man to protect my home. Our home. Our home. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Before Faith could respond, Sheriff Briggs was at the door, his expression shifting from triumph to concern when he saw Adam's condition. Good God, Zephyr, you look half dead. Only half, Adam replied with a weak attempt at humor. Blackwell's man was a poor shot, fortunately. We got them all, Briggs said. 5 in total, including Blackwell himself. Mrs. Thornton sent word when you didn't return from the creek, said she had a bad feeling. Seems she was right. How did you know to come here? Faith asked. Your brother, believe it or not, said he couldn't live with himself if he didn't speak up. Told me everything, how Blackwell's been pressuring folks, threatening them if they didn't sell. Had documents, too, proving Blackwell's been acting as an agent for Eastern Railroad investors, using illegal means to secure land. Faith felt a surge of pride for Samuel. Perhaps there was hope for mending their relationship after all. Blackwell will face trial, Adam asked. Briggs nodded. Him and his men. Assault, attempted murder, destruction of property, conspiracy, the list is long. They'll be going away for quite some time. The sheriff insisted on sending for Doc Sullivan again, and the next few hours were a blur of activity as Adam's wounds were properly treated, statements taken, and the damage to the house assessed. Through it all, Faith moved in a state of exhausted numbness, the reality of what had happened, what she had done, only beginning to sink in. By nightfall, the storm had passed, and so had the immediate crisis. The sheriff and his posse had departed with their prisoners, leaving promises of further assistance and declarations of solidarity. Doc Sullivan had pronounced Adam stable but ordered strict bed rest, with no arguments this time. Faith sat in a chair beside Adam's bed, intending to keep watch for just a few minutes while Diego got some much-needed rest. The events of the day had drained her completely, and despite her best efforts, her eyes began to close. "Faith," Adam's voice, soft but clear, roused her. "You should get some sleep in a proper bed." She blinked, straightening. "I'm fine. I want to make sure you don't develop a fever." "Always taking care of everyone else," he murmured. "Who takes care of you, Faith Alden?" The question caught her off guard. I suppose I take care of myself." Adam's hand found hers on the edge of the bed, his fingers warm despite his weakened state. "Not anymore, not if I have anything to say about it." Faith's heart quickened. "Adam, I nearly died today," he said quietly, "and all I could think about was you, how I'd never told you. Never shown you." "Told me what?" Faith whispered, hardly daring to hope. Adam's blue eyes held hers, all pretense and reserve stripped away. "That I love you, that you've brought life back to this ranch and to me, that I want you to stay, not as my housekeeper, but as my partner. My wife, if you'll have me." Faith's breath caught in her throat. Was this real or the delirium of a wounded man? "Adam, you're injured. You've lost blood. You might not be thinking clearly. I've never thought more clearly in my life," he interrupted, his grip on her hand tightening slightly. "I've known for weeks, Faith, since before Blackwell's threats, since before you proved your courage today. I was just afraid. Afraid you deserved better than a stubborn rancher with too many enemies." Tears welled in Faith's eyes, unexpected but welcome. "There is no better man than you, Adam Zephyr. You took me in when my own brother cast me out. You gave me a home, a purpose. You really saw me when others looked right through me." "Is that a yes?" A smile tugged at Adam's lips. Faith leaned forward, gently brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Yes, yes, I'll be your wife, your partner, whatever you need." "I just need you," he said simply. "Everything else we can face together." In that moment, with the ranch quiet around them and the future suddenly bright with possibility, Faith thought of that day in Silver Creek when Adam had found her alone on her brother's doorstep. "You'll stay here now," he had said. Little had she known those simple words would change everything. Adam's recovery was slow but steady. Throughout the winter months, Faith rarely left his side, tending to his wound and nursing him back to health while also managing the daily operations of the ranch. Timothy proved invaluable, eagerly taking on additional responsibilities with a maturity beyond his years. Hank and Diego kept the cattle safe and the ranch running, with occasional help from townspeople who now viewed Broken Ridge as a symbol of resistance against corruption. Samuel visited several times, bringing supplies and tentative overtures of reconciliation. Each visit became less awkward than the one before, and by Christmas, Faith felt the beginnings of a new relationship with her brother, not the blind reliance she'd once had, but a mutual respect between adults who had each found their own way. "Margaret would like you to visit for Christmas dinner," Samuel said during one December visit, "if you're willing." Faith glanced at Adam, who was sitting by the fire, his color much improved and his strength returning. "We'd be honored," she replied, including him naturally in her response. News of their engagement had spread quickly through Silver Creek, met with general approval, and only the occasional raised eyebrow about the speed of their courtship. "And perhaps," Samuel added hesitantly, "you might consider having your wedding in town." "The church is small, but actually," Adam interrupted gently, "we've decided to marry here on Broken Ridge. In the spring, when the wildflowers bloom in the south meadow." Faith smiled, touching the simple ring Adam had given her, his mother's, kept safe all these years for the right woman. "It feels right to start our life together here, where it all began." Winter gradually released its grip on the Colorado mountains. As March turned to April, green shoots appeared in Faith's carefully prepared garden, and calves dotted the pastures. The repairs to the house were complete, including new glass for the broken windows and fresh paint throughout. Faith had added feminine touches: curtains, cushions, framed pressed flowers that transformed the bachelor residence into a true home. On the first Sunday in May, with the mountains still capped in snow but the valley lush with new growth, Faith Alden became Faith Zephyr in a simple ceremony attended by everyone who mattered. Sheriff Briggs officiated. Timothy stood proudly as Adam's best man, and even Mrs. Thornton shed a tear or two as the couple exchanged vows beneath an arch of twisted willow branches decorated with wildflowers. "I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes," Faith said, her voice clear and sure. "To build our home and our life together with love, respect, and courage. To be your partner in all things, as you have been mine from the day you found me with nowhere to go and said, 'You'll stay here now.'" Adam's hands tightened around hers. "I promise to cherish and protect you, not because you need protection, but because you deserve nothing less. To honor your strength, your wisdom, and your caring heart. To wake each day grateful that you chose to stay, and to spend every day making sure you never regret that choice." As they sealed their promises with a kiss, cheers erupted from the gathered friends and neighbors. Faith felt a completeness she had never known before, a sense that whatever the future held, she was exactly where she belonged. Later, as the celebration continued with feasting and dancing in the newly expanded barn, Faith found a quiet moment with her husband near the corral fence, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. "Happy?" Adam asked, his arm secure around her waist. Faith leaned into him, content beyond words. "Completely, and you, more than I ever thought possible." He turned to face her fully. "I have something for you, a wedding gift." From his pocket, he withdrew a folded document and placed it in her hands. Faith opened it curiously, then looked up at him in surprise. "The deed to Broken Ridge, with both our names. Equal partners," Adam said simply, "in everything. The ranch is as much yours as mine now, legally as well as in spirit." Tears pricked at Faith's eyes. In 1875, few women owned property in their own right, let alone shared equally in a successful business. The document in her hands represented not just Adam's love, but his profound respect. "Thank you," she whispered, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "For this, for everything. For seeing me as I am and loving me anyway." "Not anyway," Adam corrected gently. Because you're the strongest, most determined woman I've ever known. Because when life knocked you down, you got back up and kept fighting. Because you made this place and me whole again." As darkness fell and lanterns were lit around the ranch yard, the celebration continued. Faith danced with her brother, with Timothy, with old Hank, who stepped surprisingly lightly despite his years. But always, her eyes returned to Adam, her husband, her partner, her home. When they finally bid their guests good night and retired to the main house, their house now, in every sense, Faith paused on the porch, looking out at the valley that had become so dear to her in just 7 months. "What are you thinking?" Adam asked, coming to stand beside her. "That sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best," she replied thoughtfully. "If Samuel hadn't turned me away, you would never have found me on that doorstep." "I would have found you somehow," Adam said with quiet certainty. "Some things are meant to be." Faith smiled, taking his hand and leading him inside. "Yes," she agreed. "Some things are." 5 years later, Faith stood on that same porch, watching Adam teach their 3-year-old daughter Alina to ride her first pony. Timothy, now 17 and officially the foreman of Broken Ridge, supervised with brotherly protectiveness, while 2-year-old James toddled after them on sturdy legs. The ranch had prospered beyond their expectations. The railroad had indeed come through, but on fair terms negotiated with Adam and Faith as equal partners. The profits had allowed them to expand, adding more grazing land, a proper schoolhouse for the growing number of children at neighboring ranches, and a new wing to the main house. Samuel and Margaret had moved to Denver, where Samuel's business acumen had found greater opportunity. They visited regularly, though, and Samuel had finally developed a genuine bond with his sister and her family. As for Blackwell, he had been convicted and sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. His schemes exposed, the Eastern investors had been forced to negotiate fairly with all the landowners along the proposed rail route. Silver Creek had thrived as a result, growing from a struggling frontier town to a prosperous community. "Mama, look, I'm riding," Alina called, her dark curls bouncing as the pony walked in a gentle circle, Adam's hand steady on the lead rope. "I see, my brave girl." Faith called back, her heart full. Their daughter had inherited Adam's blue eyes and Faith's determination, a formidable combination. James tugged at Faith's skirt, arms raised in a clear demand to be picked up. She obliged, settling him on her hip as he pointed excitedly at his sister. "Ellie ride." "Yes, Ellie is riding," Faith confirmed. "You'll learn too when you're bigger." As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, Adam led the pony back to the house, Alina chattering excitedly about her adventure. Faith met them at the bottom of the porch steps, James squirming to be put down. "I think we have a natural horsewoman on our hands," Adam said proudly, lifting Alina from the saddle. "Just like her mother," Faith laughed. "I was hardly a natural. I seem to recall falling off repeatedly during those first lessons." "But you got back on every time," Adam reminded her, leaning in for a quick kiss. "That's what matters." Timothy took charge of the pony, leading it toward the stable with James tottering determinedly after him. Alina, suddenly shy about her accomplishment, buried her face in her father's neck. Adam wrapped his free arm around Faith's waist, and together they watched the sunset gild the mountains that had become the backdrop to their lives. Faith thought of how far they had come, how a moment of desperation on her brother's doorstep had led to this abundance of love and purpose. "You know," Adam said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking we might add another bedroom to the house." Faith raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and why would we need another bedroom?" A slow smile spread across Adam's face. "Well, Mrs. Zephyr, I was hoping we might fill it, if you're amenable." Faith's heart swelled with love for this man who had given her so much, a home when she had none, faith in herself when she'd lost hope, and a family to replace the one she'd lost. "I'm very amenable, Mr. Zephyr," she replied, resting her head against his shoulder as Alina yawned sleepily between them. "Very amenable indeed." As they turned toward the house, the home they had built together through hardship and joy, struggle and triumph, Faith reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a displaced Boston lady to a capable ranch wife and mother, from a woman alone to one surrounded by love. "You'll stay here now," Adam had said on that fateful day. And she had stayed not out of necessity or lack of options, but because she had found where she truly belonged. In this valley, on this land, with this man and the family they had created, Faith Alden Zephyr had found not just a place to stay, but a place to live, to love, and to thrive. And as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the Colorado sky, she knew with absolute certainty that she would never leave.